So, welcome, Perennial Pride listeners. Thank you, as always, for joining. I'm hoping you're getting some great education and helping build up your financial acumen so you can take over your life and build the wealth that you want for you and your families. So, today I have a very special guest, Russ Morgan. He's the co founder and co host at Wealth Without Wall Street. You heard me right. And co-founder of the Passive Income Mastermind. And I had the pleasure of being his partner last year, Joey Murray. And so now I have the other side of the duo from Birmingham. And so I appreciate you joining me, Russ.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Tom, thank you for having me and for allowing Joey to go first because he always sets the bar really low for me, which is really, I appreciate that as a slow talker.
No worries, no worries. And it's so funny because I've always admired the work you guys do. I've listened to your own podcast, and it's always funny because I listen to everything two times speed. So everything is fast for me. As I've gotten older, I've had to slow it down a bit, but I think I know most people's voices by the speed I listen to it. So before we get going on anything, obviously, you've had an interesting background, and especially coming in from having a planner role in your lifetime. So tell my audience a little bit about your background and kind of how you evolved into the financial world.
Yeah, well, I'll do the quick version, not the mom version, Tom. I know that you live not too far from the famous street there in New York, Wall Street. I was an investment advisor, a certified financial planner. One of my first things I did early on in my career, and I thought I was a genius, to be honest. What makes a genius in the financial world, right? Rise in markets. Immediately when the 2008 crash happened, I set palm up to the sky trying to figure out what had happened and realized I wasn't quite the genius I thought. And
Mm,
the mentors I had in my life at the time, I was going to them and asking them what had happened. They didn't know. I asked them what was going to prevent it from happening again. They didn't know. And that just wasn't very settling for me as someone who likes to be in control of things. I think probably we all do, but I definitely have that nature of wanting to always be in control. And I went on a search to try to find different strategies that may be potentially contrary to what I'd been doing, but looking for anything that would work. And I was at a conference in Orlando, Florida in 2009, and I met this gentleman that was an economist. He was in his early 70s. He was talking about this idea, this radical idea of becoming your own bank, which,
mm,
again, in your world, you're surrounded by the big banks, the world's largest banks. And I listened with open ears because all the paradigms I had up to that point had come crashing down, and I was willing to learn something new. And it just opened up a door of really me going on this search personally to figure out how to build wealth that wouldn't be so fragile, that wouldn't be crashed at the hands of governments and banks and other markets that I couldn't control. And as a result of that, it really turned my life upside down. I went from this financial advisor, certified financial planner, to actually getting rid of all of my securities licenses and pursuing a path that led me to building Wealth Without Wall Street with my business partner. He was a client of mine at the time. And we started building these streams of passive income. And starting in 2020, we actually started reporting on that passive income to the world every single month on our podcast, and have continued to share it. And now I've written a book about it. So that's the quickest version I could give you.
that's crazy. So, and do you recall those moments in just like anything in life, sometimes crises and things kind of really pop in our worlds and really have us reflect. I mean,
Mm.
when you were going through that stage and learning, say, from Nelson Nash and becoming your own banker, like, what do you recall from that time frame and as you were thinking through and learning more about it?
It was hard, man. It was hard because everybody that I was around up to that point in time as well was in the belly of the beast, if you will. Like they were all doing the opposite. And it was really hard to one admit I was wrong, right? As I learned different
Mm,
things and different strategies, I had to go and tell all the clients I'd made for the last 5 years that I had new information that I didn't have before, and the information that I had provided to them up to that point I believed was wrong. And that's really hard, right? Like I think that it's hard. Yeah, I know your podcast is perennial pride, right? Pride is a really big issue that we struggle with, and it's the root of all sin, I think. And for me, that was really difficult. I had to go share that I was wrong, and I had to be willing to swim upstream because I was working in an office of 15 other financial advisors and financial planners and analysts, and I started talking about this idea that was going to go against Wall Street, that was more Main Street based. It was invest in yourself, build businesses, and buy assets that create passive income streams that are not being sold in exchanges. And all of those things were very contrary to the group I was around. And I just had to get really comfortable with not being like everybody else.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that more and more as I, obviously reflect on my own like history and life. And, you always want to, I just might drop my son off at school, and my hope is he's finding a community of people, right, that are right for him. And we always want that. And so there's some comfort around that, right? To have people that are thinking similarly and to go against it, it feels almost like, to your point, like it's scary, and it makes you second guess yourself. And so I know people who are listening to this, like, and saying, how could you actually build wealth without Wall Street? Isn't that what you're supposed to do? That's what they teach us even in high school. The very little they teach us, teach us that's what you're supposed to do. So how do you sort of bridge over that gap to really start getting open minded about these other alternative ways of building wealth and living life? Right?
Yeah.
How do people do that?
Well, so in our book that we wrote was What's About Wall Street: 3 Steps to Freedom Through Passive Income. The first step, I think the most overlooked step in this process, Tom, is that people don't really sit down and take the time to figure out what they really want. Like, if I was financially free, what would that actually look like for me? And one of the biggest things that we can do is use our imagination, right? You mentioned Nelson Nash. He wrote the book Becoming Your Own Banker. He has a line in there that imagination, he's referencing something I think Einstein said, that imagination is one of the most important things. And too often times we kill that imagination just with the day-to-day grind of our lives. And we ask people when they join our community is, if you were financially free, what would you be doing? And it allows people to start dreaming. And then we want to take that dream, take that goal, not of an ideal day, by the way, not of something like, oh, I'd love to be sitting on a beach somewhere drinking a cool drink and watching my kids play in the ocean. Well, that was an amazing day, maybe an amazing week, potentially even a great month. Probably not an ideal lifestyle, meaning like we probably would even grow tired of that, right? Like if we go down past the superficial level, we want more likely to be able to do what we want when we want, but it's more time. Usually it's time oriented, it's people oriented, it's passion oriented, it's purpose oriented. So the first step is that we have to align everything we're going to do to those goals. Because if we don't, we will fall short. We will stop, right? Like no matter what it is, why I think 98% of all New Year's resolutions are stopped 2 weeks into January, right? Because we really haven't aligned what we want to do very well. It was like that's a nice to have, but not really a want to have. So the first step in our 3-step process was setting a goal, being very focused on what that goal is, writing it out, putting it out in front of us, being as detailed process as possible with it, and sharing it with as many people in our lives that are important to us as possible to hold us accountable. The second part of that process is building the plan and the pathway to get there. And so for us, when you start thinking about, okay, I know I want to be financially free. I know that I want to take my kids to school. I know I want to pick them up every day from school. Like something as simple as that. Like that's such a fantastic thing. But there's so many people right now that they can't do that because their job starts and ends before and after their kids leave, right? And they're like, okay, how can I get that? And so they figure out a way, and they want to build a plan and a pathway to get them to where they're able to do that. And sometimes that means that they have to start figuring out how to do things in the 5 to 9, like from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m., from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., right? They start building things in those hours so that they can buy back the 9 to 5. And typically they're like, okay, well, I understand that I want to move from active income to something that produces what we call passive income, something that comes in regardless if I work. And that was the biggest change for me, is that when I set my goals of what time I wanted And what that looked like, I came across this very simple formula that said financial freedom equals passive income greater than monthly expenses.
Mm.
And that has been revolutionary in my life. It's a simple formula, right? That literally right now, as you're listening to this, whether you're riding down the road, you're on a train somewhere, or you're on the treadmill, you can determine as a percentage how close you are to financial freedom by just understanding what your passive income is and dividing that into your monthly expenses. So if you had $1,000 a month coming in from rental properties, for instance, after all expenses were paid and you were living off $10,000 a month, you are 10% of the way there. Now, if the first number is a zero, and I think so many people are in that position of zero because they've been sold this bill of goods of accumulation of having millions of dollars in some account, then you don't know how close you are. You're 0% of the way there. And that's a really tough pill to swallow. So for me, when I figured out, man, my objective is to get more passive income than I have monthly expenses. And when I hit that objective, then I can start doing the things I want to, and I can start pursuing that passion and those purposes that I have in my life. It became really easy. And there's a lot more, right? We can keep talking about all the different strategies of ways that you do it. But I think first is just knowing those simple things. And then if you believe that and that's what you want, then now you can start using that framework to make every decision from that point forward. Because at time, every decision, if you use that as the framework, financial freedom was when passive income is greater than monthly expenses. I can promise you can look at everywhere you're putting money right now financially, and all you have to do is ask the question, is it producing a passive income? Yes or no? Is it reducing a monthly expense? Yes or no? And if the answer is no and no, then you can say, well, am I getting closer to or am I getting further from financial freedom? And we'd all, as smart individuals, realize we're getting further from. So then now we can be like, okay, well, I don't want to do that anymore. So that's when people ask me, Russ, what do I do with my money? I'm like, follow the formula.
Right.
You don't need my help, right? Like my job is to teach you how to fish. Like I gave you the bait, I gave you the formula, follow the formula, and I promise you can get there.
That's great. No, and it's almost like, and I heard this the other day, it was imagine you're riding a bike and they make a little tweak on it, and now you have to ride your bike differently, right? It's not going to happen overnight, right? But it creates a mindset shift and sort of different way of thinking that forces you down the other direction, right? And having to learn these things. And I get that question often because people are in that accumulation mode and deferring. And then the hope is one day that I can cut loose my job and kind of finally start living the life I dreamed about. Well, that time is slipping away for real. And I felt it too in my corporate job, right? That time was slipping away. That's what I was selling, right? We do that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to start thinking about, well, how do you buy back that time by creating, like you're saying, income that doesn't require your active involvement all the time. Maybe it does up front, right? And some management, but certainly less of your time,
Yeah.
right? So that you can go direct it to the things that actually mean something to you instead of just working a job.
I heard this quote the other day. I hope I will give it correctly. It said that you can spend the time creating your dream, or someone else will pay you to build theirs. I think that like when we most people just aren't capable of dreaming because they're so busy, and we don't want to spend the time to take to create it. But to your point is that we will get paid well sometimes to build someone else's dream, and then we'll sit in a pool of regret. I mean, I have a 19-year-old that just went off to school. Like my life has changed, right? Like I have 4 kids. She's the oldest of 4. Just left the house. And my wife are looking at each other like our lives have changed. Like what our last 19 years are, the next 19 will not be like that because of this one change. And you don't want to sit in this pool of regret. You want to be able to say, man, I did all the things that I wanted to do. And our goal was to send our kids off and to steward them, you know, as God's resources and to provide them the opportunities to succeed as adults themselves. But man, I don't want to have this pool of regret of things I wish I would have done if I would have just taken the time to create my own dream.
Yeah, and it's often, and I think now I every time I hear someone say I don't have the time, it's obviously BS because I'm not making the time to stop and reflect, on what's happening and whether you actually approve of it or you want to change it. And but we can easily see how that turns into not days or weeks or years. It could be decades
Right.
when that happens. And to your point, like that's what sort of pushed me even to think about like what I want to be able to say when I graduate from this earth, like that I didn't regret. Like I didn't have no regrets, right? Because we gave it a try at least, or
Mm.
we followed a path or a dream that we really wanted, right? And even though it was going to be hard and requires us to maybe rethink our thinking and do some difficult things, but you won't regret it because you took the shot, right,
Right.
to do it. And that's what I always encourage my son too. I just dropped him off at school too, and it really hit me hard because I said, "What does his life look like, and have we set him on the right course
Right.
to be able to think for himself?" Right, and that's really the bulk of all of this is whether it's financial stewardship or taking care of your health. Like, are you able to think for yourself and do the things that you want for yourself and for things that matter? That's hard. I'd rather just pawn it off on somebody. Let them take the responsibility. But what I would tell you is that it's much more rewarding when you can do it for yourself and for the things that matter and dream a bit, which is unfortunately I don't see dreaming is you tell our kids that all the time and but we almost train it out of them as they get older, right? Don't dream. This is what you're supposed to do. But what your community, which I really love, is that it forces people to dream and think bigger in their lives, which is awesome. So tell me more about the community that you've built around Wealth Without Wall Street, because obviously you can have goals and have plans, but sometimes it takes a village, right?
Mm.
Sometimes you can't do things by yourself. Like, what's the community you've built and how you're supporting the people around you?
Yeah. Well, that's the third step in our book, support. So it's the GPS model. We need that tool too often when we leave the house, right, to figure out where we're going. It also tells where we are. So for us, we wanted to surround ourselves with a group of people, regardless of where we were physically, right? Like even if we were living in Connecticut, for instance, and we were surrounded by lots of people in the mindset of Wall Street, that we would be able to be in a community of people who were pursuing financial freedom where their passive income exceeds their monthly expenses. And it was something that we built kind of a love project for us back in 2017, and it's continued to grow bigger and bigger. I think we have almost 9,000 members inside of it now, and it's an app. You can go to Wealth Wall Street in your app store, wherever you get your apps, and download it and join and be a part of the conversation. But it's people that are asking questions of each other, or supporting each other. It's been a fun thing. We've built not only groups out of it, it's spawned into people who wanted to learn how to build passive income
Mm-hmm.
streams, and they wanted to show up to live events, or they wanted to get one-on-one coaching, and so all these things that we would have never envisioned when we first started this 7 years ago has continued to grow into just serving people where they are and helping them take one step closer. And I love it every time somebody in our tribe kind of rings the bell, if you will, of being able to leave the job that they were in, that maybe they were unhappy with, that now they've hit that financial freedom greater than milestone where their passive income is greater than monthly expenses. And now a lot of them have come to work with us. It's been funny, like, to see so many of the coaches in all the companies that we own have like come because they're like, hey, I learned how to do this. I just want to start teaching other people what I did. And so it's just like you, man. Like, it's just people love seeing someone else succeed, and like, hey, you probably learned a lot of things on the way. Show me how to do it so I don't have to make all the same mistakes.
That's awesome. And I would imagine, and this is what's personally affected me the most, and I think this is what you guys have built in this community around obviously dreaming, but when you're freed up in a lot of ways, then your natural gifts and passions and life expand quite dramatically in my mind, right? And that's the thing that I am impressed by most by folks like you and other entrepreneurs that they're able to now tap into all the things that they know and they're naturally gifted at and bring more value to this world in some way, right? That maybe within their jobs and just to kind of make ends meet, that it's almost stifled in a lot of way. and it's opening up and allowing people to become who they really were always meant to be, probably, right? But now you've unleashed it. And that to me is the most exciting aspect of all of these sort of things around financial freedom, is that the potential, what it does in the community and the world, is expanded because of it. So
Yeah.
have you seen that with your community and what people are doing now as they kind of have built their own financial freedom and kind of gone on different paths in life?
Yeah, I mean, there's a selfish benefit for Joey and I because we get to learn from the things that they do. We get an opportunity to see them doing different strategies that we haven't even heard of.
Mm.
And that's kind of how our podcast grew as well. And it was just us asking really interesting questions of really smart people. And we developed this tool. I'm not certain if you know about it or not, but we developed this tool called the Investor DNA, because one of the most common questions we get of people once they get going down this road of wealth without Wall Street is, what do I invest in?
Mm.
And so we go through this process we call our passive income operating system, where our objective is to turn active income into passive income and to do it in an automated way. And to do it to where it works on autopilot, right? To give us back more of the time, right? That's what we should be doing. Well, when we get to the point of where we're trying to buy assets that produce passive income, people still have been non-educated. They don't know. And so it's helping them understand there's not an easy button that we just press and it spits out money, right? Like, you need to invest from your own giftings. And we learned this the hard way, but through watching plenty of other people do it, we came up with this idea that we match up our personality styles with the different investment opportunities there are. And so we developed this passive income matrix that has all these different passive income strategies that exist. And we take someone's personality style. So we actually partnered with the assessment company called DISC. I don't know if you're familiar with DISC.
Yeah.
And every one of us have that personality style, and it's multiple sometimes. And then we say, from that, your style, so you take that style, then we actually go through and take you through each one of those different investment options that are out there and say, here's, Tom, how you will see this from your perspective, right? You're going to see this. If you were a D, this is how it's going to affect you from a results-oriented nature. If you're an I, here's how you're going to be able to influence the outcome. If you're an S, this is where the steadiness, the consistency is going to be. If you're a C, this is where all the numbers are going to lie. Here's all the pros of all of those things, and you're going to see it from this angle. But from the opposite, we're also going to show you the cons. Here's where you're not going to have control of this aspect. Here's where you're going to have to do detail work that you're not going to like. Here's where there's going to be some uncertainty as you build different systems into place. Or here's where maybe you won't have all the answers. And the beauty of that is that when people go through that approach, it eliminates so many options that they would have done just because someone else was doing them. And that's where I felt early on, is I just thought, well, the path to passive income starts and finishes in real estate, right? That's what you hear. Everybody does real estate. That's what I'll do. And the first investment property I bought was a single family property in my college town, and it sucked. I mean, just be honest, like it was just not for me. And it wasn't that it didn't produce an income. It did. I got all $97 a month from it, whether I liked it or not. But what I realized is I couldn't influence its outcome. I couldn't make it go from $97 to $197. And the only way I could make the income increase was buying more. But because I didn't really like the asset class as a whole, I didn't connect to me as an individual, even though I'd watched others who owned hundreds of properties and were like so financially successful. I didn't realize, why was I not connecting it? Because my I profile wanted to influence the outcome. I want to be involved in the process. Well, it was managed by a management company. I couldn't do anything with it. So I had this just lack of interest in it. So then I didn't buy 100 of them, right? I didn't want to buy 100 of them. And I didn't understand that until we started going through this process. And then we interviewed this guy on our podcast, maybe 2018, 2019. He was talking about short-term rentals. And I was like, that seems interesting for an I profile. That seems exciting. That seems different. Oh, you can not even have to own the real estate. You could just lease the property and do it. Oh, we should do that. Well, immediately I got excited because I could influence the outcome. I could go hire someone to run the business, but then I could promote it. I could tell everybody. It could be in my city. I could actually train the person that we put in as an operator how to do different management skills, how to do different marketing things. And so we went from 0 units to over 26 units in a period of about 18 months. So immediately I was able to influence outcomes. So for my I profile, that's what I wanted to do. And so I went from $97 a month on a long-term rental to we were doing $25,000 to $30,000 a month at our peak in net revenue from our short-term rental business in less than 18 months. And it was like, oh, I get it. Well, so we've experienced that. And so that's one of the tools that our community uses is that they go through that process, the investor DNA process. They figure out who they are as an investor. Then they eliminate all the options that they don't resonate with. And they find the one or two that really do. And they go deep. And because they go deep, then they use experience. They use confidence. They will invest way more money and way more time. And ultimately, they'll get to their objective way faster as a result.
No, that is incredible. I often get asked that question, Russ, is, yeah, where should I invest if they're so heavily in the market? Like they want to diversify, they just have no idea. And usually my first question is, what is it that you are interested in, right? Or passionate about, or have some level of passion about. But you're going to another layer of like what fits you in your personality, the way you think, that's more tailored to you, right? Because the last thing I want you to do is get into an investment that's going to keep you up all night, right? That's the worst thing. Like you're describing, maybe a rental product just wasn't a good fit. It wasn't exciting. It's just more of a stressful thing. Well, that will lead to what? Ignoring it, trying to get away from it. It's definitely not going to be as rewarding. But what you describe is fascinating because then it can align people's personalities and interests to an investment. And to your point, they probably would want to learn more about it and get excited about it. Just the way you describe your passion around the short-term rentals, you probably couldn't get enough of it.
Right.
And that to me will lead to a higher chance of success for sure.
Yeah. The more we invest from our investor DNA, the more success we see people having. It's just like you mentioned your son going off to school, and I'm not certain whatever he wants to do after school, but we would encourage them probably to say, hey, go spend some time in that field, maybe working as an intern or go visit. Just be there for a little bit. Like before you invest 4 years of college, in essence, trying to become the thing, and then the rest of your life potentially doing the thing. Go see if you actually like the thing. Like go spend a week, 2 weeks, a month. I mean, we're paying to go to schools, right? And somewhere or another, whether it's time, money, all the things. Go work for somebody for free in the field that you think that you want to go do, right? Figure out how to create value for them. Even if they didn't pay you, the best thing you could learn is whether or not you really want to do it in the future. Like we have a customer and a member in our passive income mastermind that she lives up in New York City, and she was an engineer, and she was sitting there having conversations with her colleagues she was in her mid-20s, and she's having conversations with colleagues on Mondays and Tuesdays about what they had done the previous weekend. And they were in their 40s and 50s, and they're lamenting how frustrated they were that the weekend was so short, and they're back at work, and they're grinding and grinding. And she was thinking, like, is that what I want my life to be? Like, do I want to have the same thought process on Mondays and Tuesdays where I'm hating the rest of the week? And she started listening to different podcasts like yours and others, and realized that there was different ways to build streams of income. And someone in her mid-20s learned within 12 months how to build a passive income stream, buying and selling raw land, of all things, and turning it on and selling it owner finance. So she got this note income every single month, right? And so over a period of about 4 years time, she's built almost $30,000 a month of reoccurring income outside of what she does for a living. Now it's more than doubled, probably tripled the income that she was making as an engineer, but it's given her now the freedom to say, I kind of like my work, but I will not be one of the people here complaining about what I'm doing, because I always have the ability. I've got the hall pass to leave anytime I want to. But she knew that the people that she was around, they didn't have the hall pass. They had built their lifestyles around the incomes of the job that they were working at, and all they could do is complain about it. And so I think, man, we have such an opportunity to learn strategies and ideas. Like we live in a shared economy with just an abundant amount of resources. There is a way to become financially free. We just have to figure out which way it connects with us individually and personally and go hard at it.
Yeah, no. And to that point, I mean, and I think for achievers like you and me, and we're trying to strive and do more for ourselves and our families, we want to have that control, but the reality is we can't control everything, even if I want to. But you can control how to protect yourself on things when they do change, right? Like you're saying, like imagine you're sitting in a situation now where, who knows if we're in a recession or when it comes, and people are going to get laid off potentially. But who has the sort of the power or strength to have the sort of options available to them even when they don't need it, right? And describing the one girl, she has it. She has the protections around it because she has other sources of income, and she has more control over the direction of her life and her finances. And it just took a little bit of energy and learning for it to do it. So I encourage folks to do it. So when you were mentioning the passive income streams, like you mentioned land flipping, what are some of the other interesting passive income strategies? I mean, we won't go deep into them, but what are some of the ones you found along the way that were just something you didn't know about that were just interesting and you got really involved with it?
Yeah. Well, so if you're interested in the things that we're doing, you can go to what'swhatwallstreet.com/passive hyphen income. And so every single month, we will actually do a podcast specifically on that subject. And we break down the kind of behind the scenes of all the different passive income streams we're involved in. But yeah, one of the first ones we did was the short term rental deal. And that was super interesting. And one of the second ones we did, we actually have that same concept I was sharing with you. That girl was, I say girl, young woman, was doing. Unfortunately, I've got to the point where anybody 15 to 20 years younger than me, I misclassify it, right? But we actually started doing that ourselves. So currently, we bring in a little over $30,000 a month in our land flipping business, which was super interesting. We've actually navigated into doing online businesses where we've bought businesses online that just work 100% digitally, and those businesses are different streams that we get paid in affiliate revenue or for advertising on them. We've done a number of different syndications where we've invested in multifamily, mobile home parks, car washes, ATM machines. I mean, a lot of different places there. We've been in the crypto space where we actually weren't buying and selling the currency, but we were mining. We bought 30 or 40 miners in 2017 that was mining Ethereum and did that until about 2 years ago when they changed from proof of work to proof of stake. And we've owned Bitcoin miners as well. We have ownership stake in lots of different types of businesses. And Joey has a business called 100 Unicorns that I make fun of all the time. It doesn't make any money. We've had interest in a cattle company that didn't make any money. Tom, we bought an ice vending machine. That's one of those that I wouldn't do again. We've done Turo. We've done it both ways, the good and the bad way, where one we've tried to manage it ourselves, and one where we handed it off to a manager. So we've seen success and failures within that. I mean, you private lending, I mean, you name it, man. We really have tried so many things. And I always say it's out of an abundance of trying to teach our audience different ways that they can do things. But man, be honest, I just love all the different stuff. Like that's my profile. So I love doing lots of different things, but don't necessarily encourage people to do all the things that we're doing because it's difficult to do all those things.
Well, and to your point, I think as you're leading this community and experimenting and experiencing, just like you're recommending, go try a job and see kind of what it's like to actually live in it, in that job and the types of work it entails. And here you're exploring with different passive income strategies and kind of how they work and if they're a good fit in the long run and maybe it fits with people in the community. So I think it's fascinating because you always hear that the mantra is you have to have most of the wealthier folks have like whatever number of passive income streams that come into their lives, and for many people it's very few. And so I've encouraged folks to go explore and look at all the great resources in the Wealth Beyond Wall Street community because there's a lot for you to take in and explore, right? Because they're out there and they've done a lot of homework already to experience them and give you some steps to get ahead to kind of explore them. So, where would folks best to kind of connect with you guys, Russ? Is it through the Wealth Without Wall Street community? Like how best to sort of learn more about what you guys have?
Yeah. Well, we actually built a page just for your podcast listeners. So if you go to wealthaboutwallstreet.com/perennial pride, we kind of gave you links to all the things. One of them there is a free resources, which has so many different tools. One of them is the Investor DNA ebook, right? So we talked a little bit about that. I think I mentioned the passive income operating system. That's a tool that I think would be interesting for your listener to learn how did they do that. We've ran passive income master classes from different strategies, and I mentioned the land flipping thing. So in that passive income master class we had Mark Podolsky, the land geek, actually do a talk specifically on that. Man, the Passport Challenge is one of those free resources where it really helps you define your goal and what you're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, it goes on and on, but if you go to wealthaboutwallstreet.com/perennial pride, you can get access to all those tools, and just love to support your audience any way we can.
Thank you so much. And certainly, if you haven't gotten it yet, go buy the book, Wealth Without Wall Street, Three Steps to Freedom Through Passive Income. Great book, a lot of great touches on some of the resources that Russ just shared with you. And we'll put that in the show links and everything so people can get access to them. And I'm really impressed by all the work you guys are doing and spreading the good education out. And so for those who are listening, it's out there. The education's out there. You got people who are trailblazers in this space and providing all this great education to empower you to take control of your financial life and ultimately your entire life, right? It isn't just about money. Money is a tool that's going to help you live the life that you always dreamed of. So, Russ, I really appreciate all your time and sort of insights to things and all the great work you're doing. So, thanks for joining me on this podcast.
Man, thanks for having me, Tom. It's great to catch up.
Take care.
Thanks for joining me on this episode today. I really am grateful for you as listeners to the Perennial Pride podcast. I hope you're getting some tremendous value out of it and hopefully pushing you along your journey to financial freedom. I put this podcast together really to help you get more educated around your finances so that you feel empowered to live the life that you really want. And if you like the content that you heard today or watched, then I would encourage you to go to my website, perennialpride.com. There's tons of other content there. And you can access my book, Wealth Beyond the Numbers. You can buy it there on my website. It's a aggregation of a lot of great tips and tools I've learned to not only build my wealth in my accounts, but build wealth in my life and abundance and joy, and something that has a lot of my experiences in the journey that I've been on personally. Hopefully that can be also of value to you as you sort of move forward. So thanks again for being a Perennial Pride listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.